medical world, or, for the most part, increasing student fees. And the market is invading the university at the same time as these procedural evaluations of the university are also increasing. This ranking of universities across the world creates an elite of universities and then a dispossessed mass of universities. Increased polarization. So, this process of ranking and regulation and evaluation is in the interests of the businesses who want to invest in universities, because the rankings tell you where to invest your money. Supposedly. Anyway, the argument is that these are the pressures on the university, and I think that what we have to do in the world today is re-emphasize the critical and the public. We have to do this. We have to, on the one hand, develop within our universities a community of critical discourse. We have to be transcending disciplinary divides. We have to be thinking about the university and what it is in the world today. And we have to also rethink the meaning of the public university. We have to actually think about the public university doesn't only mean free access. It means a university that engages with publics, that is unequivocally in society and has to actually build connections to publics, in a sense to counteract the processes going on above. We have to rethink in this moment of crisis of what the university is. So I think this scheme of public sociology is what sociologists can do. Public sociology is none other than building those ties to publics. And I think sociology has a particular interest in this, because sociology is so closely connected to, takes the standpoint of civil society, in a sense, keeping market and state at bay. Not eliminating them, but keeping them at bay, limiting the way they colonize civil society. So that is where I should end. And there are many other dilemmas that we could talk about, but this will be enough for now. Okay, I'll end on that note. Thank you.
Hola, soy Alberto, sociólogo de la Universidad. Y quisiera preguntarte directamente si tú piensas que o es sociología pública o sociología sin marxismo.
Well, that's the first question.
Wow, that's difficult.
Okay. So, can there be public sociology without Marxism? Absolutely yes. Public sociology can be Catholic public sociology, it can be Hayek, neoclassical vision of... there's no limit to the political valence of public sociology, in my view. However, it is the case that many people think that as Marxism disappears, I was a Marxist, and so Burawoy was a Marxist, and suddenly the Soviet Union collapsed, and then he's a public sociologist. think, ah, this is Marxism in sheep's clothing. Well, look, I think that sociology has a critical perspective on the world. Whether it's Marx, whether it's Durkheim, whether it's Weber, they all have a critical perspective on the world. In taking the standpoint of civil society, they have a critique of market fundamentalism and state dictatorship, and always have done in a long history, from the beginning. So all three of them, all traditions in sociology, and of course post-colonial traditions or feminist traditions, equally critical of markets and states, insofar as they overextend themselves. So what they all share is this concern and commitment to civil society, a concern for public discourse, for the open public discourse. And so I think that if sociologists all share one thing, it is in the commitment to a vigorous, flourishing civil society. And in Marxism, I think, today, has to think in similar terms. We have to sociologize Marxism. You know, we have Marxism of the economy, capitalism going to crash. We have Marxism of the state socialism, Soviet communism. We now need what I call sociological Marxism, a Marxism that commits itself to the expansion of civil society, and therefore has a close connection to public sociology. So Marxism is moving towards sociology. It has to in the modern day. But that is not to say that all public sociology is Marxist. Not at all. Yeah.
Mientras lo escuchaba, pensaba, se me vino a la cabeza Bourdieu. Yo sé que ustedes han dialogado con él también, porque Bourdieu, sobre todo en el último periodo, esto fue alguien que insistió muchísimo en la pregunta justamente por una sociología pública, y quisiera preguntarle cómo reflexiona este modelo con su concepto, con su propuesta de objetivación participante.
It's a favorite topic of mine. Sociology has been taken over by Bourdieu. Yes, in the United States, not everywhere. Okay, Bourdieu is a very interesting figure. Because Pierre Bourdieu, French sociologist, is probably the greatest public sociologist of our era. He was an extraordinarily important figure in French political life as a sociologist. It was an amazing, astounding phenomenon to watch his ascendancy from around about 1980 in the public sphere in France, as soon as he became professor in Collège de France. So, undoubtedly, he was a major figure of public sociology. And in his last years, as you say, he essentially defended that public engagement. But the paradox of Pierre Bourdieu is that his theorization left him without any public. He did not have a public, according to his theory. According to the theory of Pierre Bourdieu throughout his life, even to Pascal in Meditations, which was written 5 or 6 years before he died, he claimed that the dominated classes cannot understand sociology because they have a habitus of domination and they cannot achieve any sociological understanding because they are driven by material need. To understand sociology, you have to be an intellectual with Schule, with actually some leisured existence. So, he cannot be talking to the dominated because they cannot understand him. And the dominant, they have no interest in understanding his criticism of French society. So who is he talking to? Well, he's talking to intellectuals, that their theories generated in the academic world are generalizable. So he must be just talking to sociologists and anthropologists. But not all. Only special ones, the American ones, oh no, they understand nothing. They are sold out. So who's left? Well, French sociologists. But no, he has big problems with so many of the French. It's only Hurtado himself. There's only one public left when you go through his theory, and that's Bourdieu himself. And this is the paradox. Because he was the leading public sociologist of our time, but his theory could not account for it. He is there in the 1993, 4, 5, and on the picket lines, talking to workers about the treachery of the new socialist government. Very public engagement. He's writing on the front pages of Le Monde. But that's what he's doing, that's his practice, but his theory is somewhere else. And he never, in my view, ever comes to terms with this contradiction. He says everybody has this contradiction between theory and practice. Ah, but does he examine himself? And this is Mr. Reflexivity. Says you should be examining yourself in the field. So I think that's the unresolved issue in Pierre Bourdieu. How can we account for his public engagement with his theory? I think we have to change either his public engagement or his theory. Anyway, I could go on about it, but I think it's really a fascinating account because he's undoubtedly a model. But let me say one last thing. Pierre Bourdieu is French. Never forget that. And he's in France. And in France, you know, if you're a professor in Collège de France, you know, this is like Schwarzenegger in California. I mean, these are public figures because the French public sphere is so open to intellectual engagement, and his death has been, in fact, a tragedy for left-wing thought in France. A huge hole has been left. So I think I do want to emphasize the peculiarities of France when we say that he is the greatest public sociologist of our era. He's operating in a context where elite intellectuals are very powerful. Foucault, Sartre, Lévi-Strauss, these are the figures